So we know how the memory process generally works, but what is our memory system for? What is its purpose? And the answer is that, like other human mental and physical systems, the primary goal of our memory system at a basic level is to allow us to adapt to our surrounding environment so we can stay alive and be healthy and successful, as opposed to being a hard drive that just stores and then spits back verbatim the information that we encounter. For example, it's much more useful for us to remember that our favorite sports team only lost because of a bunch of unfair penalties, as opposed to just not being as talented as the other team. Because that makes us feel happier and more justified in our decision to cheer for them. Maple Leafs fans are familiar with this, of course. Or you love sushi, but if you get sick off of it one time, you may never be able to eat it again, because now it makes you nauseous. That nausea is actually your memory system trying to protect you from eating something that might be dangerous. So the key point about human memory to keep in mind as we go through this section is that our memory system is not set up to do what we want it to do in an interview setting, which is to give a very accurate and detailed account of a past event. So let's look at some specific issues that can occur that make detailed and accurate recall of past events difficult for interviewees. The first major issue we face is that we only have a very limited amount of attentional resources. That is, we can only pay attention to a small amount of the available sensory information at any given point in time. And we know that information we don't attend to doesn't get encoded. So this means that the vast majority of information we encounter will never be remembered. It is simply lost and replaced with new sensory information. Two additional concepts related to the attentional process that are important to mention are stress and expectations. So first, many interviewees that are questioned by the police have been involved in a very stressful or traumatic event. And often when people are highly stressed, their attentional focus becomes very narrow and are dedicating all resources to attend to the source of the stress, such as a knife or gun. And because of this, when they are later asked to recall the event, they only be able to remember the central details, such as the look of the knife, and none of the peripheral details, such as what the person looked like. So they may not be able to remember details that they should be able to, and that is because of the impact of stress on their memory system. The second issue is that people often remember what they expect to remember, as opposed to what actually happened. We all bring our own biases and assumptions to situations. And oftentimes our minds will actually fill in the blanks with what often or should have happened, even without us realizing this is happening. So we both store little of what we actually experience, and what is stored initially may already contain inaccuracies. Once we have information encoded into our long-term memory, we typically must store it for a period of time before we are actually asked to recall it. Unfortunately, the stored information does not just sit there unaltered until it's needed, but instead, several issues impact the quantity and quality of the stored information that we can recall. First, the simple passing of time leads to forgetting, particularly of fine-grained details of an event. The basic gist of what happened may remain, but the specific aspects of a given event are unlikely to be recalled if it happened months or years ago. Second, and more dangerous as it relates to criminal investigations, our memories are continually being edited based on feedback from external sources. For example, an eyewitness to a car accident hears on the news that one of the drivers was intoxicated at the time, and now they remember that the vehicle appeared to be swerving a bit before it hit the other vehicle. This new information is incorporated into the original information. In the vast majority of cases, the individual is unaware that this has happened, and instead assumes that all of it was part of their original memory. So what they report personally remembering is actually a combination of what they experienced and what they've heard from other sources. So this leads to the final step in the process, which is recalling the stored information. And when this occurs, it is more of a reconstruction of the original event than an actual verbatim recall. What and how much someone recalls are a function of not only the bits of memory that are stored, but also the person's current assumptions, attitudes, feelings, and beliefs. For example, immediately after a divorce, a couple may remember their marriage as being much worse than it actually was because of their current negative feelings towards their former partner. In addition, and importantly for interviewing settings, the quality of the reconstruction is heavily dependent on the method used to generate the recall process. For example, using closed-ended questions leads to shorter recall, while broad, open-ended questions leads to more extensive recall, a topic we'll discuss in a later unit. The recall of memory is also the only step in the process that the interviewer usually has any direct control over. And so approaches such as the cognitive interview are designed to access as much of the stored information as possible while realizing it may be incomplete and altered due to normal memory processes. Keeping these issues in mind, let's return to the original memory example of completing a multiple choice exam. Completing it successfully may be relatively easy if there is a reasonably small amount of material, you studied it extensively, you're tested immediately after studying, and the test contains straightforward questions. However, imagine that you are being tested on material from a junior high math class that took place on a very specific date and time several years ago. A class where you barely paid attention to the teacher because you were worried about your sick pet. And the test is comprised of very specific, targeted questions about the content of the class. How well do you think you'd do on that test? How well do you think others should expect you to do? And yet this is a situation faced by many victims of crime within the criminal justice system who come forward after the crime has taken place and are expected to be able to recall the event with great detail and great clarity, which is why an understanding of the workings of our memory system are so crucial for creating realistic expectations for interviewee recall. A common perception of our memory held by many people is that it works like a video recorder, in that we store verbatim information regarding our past experiences, and then when we need to recall them, we just access the file and report what happened. However, a better conceptualization of memory may be to consider it as a Wikipedia page. It generally contains a decent amount of information regarding a topic, and most of the information is accurate. However, it is also likely incomplete, and it is open to alteration, not only by the creator, but by others that interact with the content as well. And so it is continually being updated and edited. And so, like our memory, the final product of a Wikipedia page is a combination of the original semi-accurate content and a variety of alterations over time. And this all leads to the reality that obtaining a detailed and accurate account from interviewee is more difficult than it might seem initially.